Canton, Massachusetts, had snow on the streets that cold winter night, and most people were staying inside to stay warm. But something wasn't right in one small apartment. Sandra Birchmore, who was 23 years old and expecting a baby, had been busy planning for the future. Her baby shower checklist was on the table, and clothes for the shower were still in their boxes. But all of a sudden, she stopped answering the phone and didn't show up for work. Days went by, and no one could reach her. When the police came to check on her, the apartment was empty. They knocked, but got no answer. As soon as they forced the door open, a terrible smell hit them. What they found inside would leave them with more questions than answers and reveal a shocking truth that no one had seen coming. Sandra Birchmore was born on May 13, 1997, in the quiet Massachusetts town of Stoneham. Her childhood was marked by problems that made her grow up quickly. Her mother, Denise, had serious health problems for most of her life, which put a lot of financial stress on the family. Sandra's father was never there, and he never gave her any mental or financial support. This meant that Denise was the only person who could help her, and even though things were hard, Sandra was never alone. Denise asked her longtime partner and her mother Grace to help her raise her daughter. Grace, in particular, was a constant in Sandra's life. She took care of Denise when her health got worse in a home where survival was more important than security. Sandra learned to be strong and responsible at a young age. She was also drawn to the world of public service because she had a deep respect for authority figures, especially police officers and military personnel. This respect wasn't random. Many of Sandra's maternal relatives had served in law enforcement or the military, which naturally shaped her view. Sandra's interest in police work began when she was 8 years old and joined a program called Respect. This program helped kids develop civic responsibility and communication skills while building positive relationships with law enforcement. It was here that Sandra's dream of joining the police force began to take shape. She joined the Police Explorers program when she was 12 years old because she was determined to follow this road. This hands-on program, which began in the 1970s and gave young people an introduction to law enforcement by teaching them safety protocols, emergency response, and police procedures, ran from 2010 to 2016. Sandra gave the program her all. She paid attention to every lesson and worked hard to improve her skills. Friends and teachers praised Sandra's hard work and discipline, realizing that this wasn't just an extracurricular activity for her, it was the basis for her future. But life had other plans. Sandra was 19 years old when her mother Denise died, leaving her upset. Her aunt also died. Even though Denise's sister offered support, the loss was very sad. During this time of grief, she also lost her place in the Police Explorers program, which left her at a crossroads. The career in law enforcement she had once hoped for seemed to slip away as she struggled to get back on her feet. After graduating from high school, Sandra looked for a new direction. She enrolled in college prep courses with the goal of pursuing a nursing degree while she changed her focus. She never really lost her respect for police work and kept in touch with people from the Explorers program. However, the problems she had faced from a young age had shaped her in ways she didn't fully realize. The death of her mother and the lack of a strong father figure left her looking for guidance and approval from adults. This vulnerability would later play a key role in her fate in 2020, when she was trying to start over. Sandy went to Canton, a town in Norfolk County, Massachusetts, that has about 25,000 people. People wanted to move to Canton because it was a safe, family-friendly place to live. She got a job as a teacher's assistant at Sharon Public School, where she worked closely with students who had special needs. This wasn't her ultimate career goal, but she saw it as a step toward a better future. She had a strong desire to help others after taking care of her mother, and she hoped to find a job where she could do that. Her co-workers thought she was nice and outgoing. At times, her emotional openness seemed too much. She often shared personal details with acquaintances, which made some people uncomfortable. Despite this, it was clear that she cared deeply about her students and worked hard at her job, even though she didn't have a lot of experience. Her warmth and willingness to connect with others made her likable, but it also made her easy for people to take advantage of because she was so trusting. Sandra thought of her time at Sharon Public School as a short stop on the way to something bigger. She had hopes and dreams of a future full of meaning, but her desire to make friends and her tendency to trust others without question would eventually lead her down a dangerous path that would have terrible results. Sandra Birchmore met Matthew Farwell for the first time in 2010. She was only 13 years old at the time and eager to join the Police Explorers program, which sparked her interest in becoming a police officer. Matthew, a 27-year-old teacher in the program, quickly became a mentor figure in her life. At first, they only talked about things related to the program, but as time went on, they talked about more things. When Sandra was 15, Matthew started sending her personal messages. These messages made it harder to tell the difference between mentoring and something much more troubling, because Matthew was an older, more experienced figure. Matthew carefully built a sense of control over her by using sneaky psychological tricks to keep her dependent on him. What began as advice quickly turned into abuse. As the years went by, their relationship became more and more unhealthy. Matthew's effect on Sandra grew stronger as he became more involved in every part of her life. He was very possessive and wanted to know where she was all the time and insisted that she tell him about herself. His need for control grew. Not enough words. Eventually, he used technology to track her moves, which made it even harder for her to be independent. As his jealousy grew, so did his mood swings. His once warm tone quickly turned hostile, and his words were full of hidden threats. Whenever Sandra tried to stand up for herself, she could not disagree with him. He saw any act of defiance as a betrayal. But Sandra stayed hopeful that things would get better, even though their relationship was getting worse. She tried to make sense of his behavior by telling herself that he cared about her, and she held on to the idea that the man who used to seem like her protector would not become her biggest fear by early 2021. Sue Ann. She was getting ready for a big change in her life. She was going to have a baby. Even though life had been hard for her, she looked forward to the future with renewed optimism. Her apartment soon filled up with baby items she had carefully chosen, from tiny outfits to essential newborn supplies. Even though she didn't have a lot of money, she was determined to celebrate the arrival of her baby. She carefully planned a baby shower, eager to share the milestone with her closest friends and family. Her excitement was palpable, and everyone could feel how much she wanted to be a mother. She even booked a newborn photography session to capture the first moments of her child's life. But behind her outward joy, she was going through a lot of emotional turmoil. Sandra was still under a lot of stress because of her relationship with Matthew. He was still a big part of her life, but instead of helping her, he seemed to cause more stress than comfort in the days before the tragedy. Matthew's behavior became less stable when he went to Sandra's apartment to help her get ready for the baby. During one visit, he asked to see her house and asked for both the key and the door code, saying that he needed them in case of an emergency. While he was inside, he seemed to be paying more attention to her bedroom closet than usual. Soon after his visit, Sandra told a friend that Matthew had been acting strangely. She tried to explain his actions by telling herself that he was worried that this would be the last time she gave him an honest opinion about something that worried her. Concern grew at Sharon Public School when Sandra didn't show up for work and didn't answer the phone when called. A recent snowstorm had caused problems in the city, but Sandra's absence seemed out of the ordinary after a few days of not being in touch, so her co-workers called the police. Officers were sent to her apartment to check on her welfare. When they got there, they knocked on the doorbell several times, but no one answered. There was a strong smell coming from inside that set off an alarm. When they forced their way inside, they found Sandra hanging from a closet door by a belt. Her body showed signs of having been dead for several days. At first look, there was nothing wrong with the scene. In the first police report, there were no signs of a fight. The furniture wasn't moved, and the apartment seemed to be in a general state of chaos that fit with how she usually lives. However, when her family later saw the apartment, they noticed things that didn't seem right. A load of freshly washed but still wet laundry was left in the washing machine, which suggests she was in the middle of her daily routine when she died. On the table, unopened packages of baby essentials that had just been delivered sat there untouched. One of the most disturbing things that was found was a broken necklace near her body. There were questions about what really happened in Sandra's last moments after she was found, because her family said she wore the necklace all the time, even while sleeping or showering. This discovery made it less likely that she had killed herself, because if she hadn't taken it off on purpose, how did it end up broken near the scene? There were also troubling inconsistencies with Sandra's phone. She was known to use it all day and rarely turn it off, but records showed that it had been turned off a whole day before she died and never turned on again. This didn't fit with her usual behavior, and her family thought it pointed to outsiders trying to find out the truth. Sandra's family and friends wanted a more complete investigation, and as more information came to light, especially about her troubled relationship with Matthew Farwell, the authorities had to change their minds about what they thought at first. Concerns were raised about his actions in the days before Sandra's death, such as his insistence on getting into her apartment and his strange behavior during his last visit. These differences between agencies led investigators to look deeper into what had really happened in Sandra's home. Sandra Birchmore's last known activities happened on the evening of February 1st, 2021, when she came home from work around 5 p.m. Soon after, she went outside for a short time to get a package of baby clothes she had ordered. Later, at exactly 5:46 p.m., cameras caught her outside again, this time brushing snow off her car. She went back into her apartment, which was the last time anyone saw her living. Later that night, a familiar face showed up on the building's security cameras: Matthew Farwell, around 9:09 p.m. He was caught on camera walking into the lobby and up to Sandra's floor. He stayed in her apartment for about 30 minutes before leaving. He stood out in his heavy winter clothes and mask, showing that he was ready for the cold, but the way he concealed his identity seemed on purpose. The next day, Sandra was noticeably absent from work and stopped responding to messages. Federal detectives quickly became interested in the circumstances of her death and began a full review of the case. Their first concern was the initial crime scene assessment, which they thought was too superficial and had missed important details. Soon, investigators found evidence that didn't support the idea that Sandra had killed herself. She had been actively planning for the arrival of her baby by ordering supplies, having a baby shower, and even scheduling professional maternity photos. These plans showed that she was looking forward to the future, not planning to end her life. When forensic experts looked at the marks on her body, they didn't match what would normally be expected in a case of self-inflicted harm, which raised more suspicion. When police looked at Matthew's phone records, they found deleted messages that painted a disturbing picture of long-term abuse and manipulation. It was also confirmed that Sandra was pregnant with Matthew's child, which changed the course of the investigation. At the time of her death, she was in her 3rd month of pregnancy, which made their already tense relationship even worse. Matthew not only denied having the baby, but he also responded violently and put mental and physical pressure on Sandra because she was pregnant. Things got worse. Conflict. At first, Matthew tried to stay away from her and avoid talking about the baby. But as time went on and he realized what could happen, he got back in touch with her. His sudden change in behavior, reaching out to her after trying to avoid her, became another red flag in the investigation into her death. Investigators also found out an important piece of information. Matthew was married and had kids. Sandra always knew about Matthew's family, but in late 2020, she found out that he and his wife were expecting their 3rd child. This news broke her heart, and she told a friend about how badly it affected her. In one of her messages, she said she was thinking about telling Matthew's wife about their relationship, but she never did. When Sandra told Matthew she was pregnant, he was angry. He not only asked if he was the father, but he made it clear that he didn't want anything to do with the baby. As things got worse, Matthew's behavior became more erratic, and Sandra became more and more anxious. She told those close to her that she felt overwhelmed by the pressure and threats she was facing while investigators looked through their messages. They found patterns that were scary. Matthew often kept an eye on where she was very jealous of her, and sent her threatening texts. Matthew Farwell abused his power to control Sandra, and maybe even other girls. What started as a case about one girl quickly revealed a pattern of wrongdoing in the Police Explorers program, where Matthew had been a mentor. A review of the program's records showed many examples of inappropriate relationships between instructors and participants. Sandra had started the program when she was 13 and started dating Matthew when she was only 15. This was both morally wrong and illegal, given their big age difference. But Sandra's case was not an isolated one. A bigger look into the Police Scouts program showed, since the 1970s, when problems started happening without being stopped, the program has had very little control, letting mentors abuse their power without getting in trouble. Investigators discovered that other cops, such as Matthew's brother William Farwell and their boss Robert Devine, were also involved in bad behavior. Over 200 cases of wrongdoing from over 20 years were found, and many of them had never been reported or properly probed. More research showed that in January 2021, a police officer got a tip about possible wrongdoing by Matthew. Instead of filing an official report, the officer privately warned Matthew, giving him the chance to hide his tracks. Right away, Matthew started deleting messages and planning moves to win Sandra's trust again. Detectives thought they were meant to stop her from coming forward. No one knows for sure what happened in Sandra's apartment that night, but forensic evidence helped detectives put together a likely chain of events. It was thought that things got worse. When Sandra brought up her baby again, she may have been trying to get Matthew to notice or support her, which could have had bad effects on him if it came out. The broken chain that was found next to her body showed that she had been fought with. Investigators thought that Matthew used force to restrain Sandra. Her phone had been turned off soon after he arrived, so she might not have been able to call for help. These results changed the case from a possible suicide to a likely murder. Matthew Farwell was arrested in 2024 after Sandra's death, but the case also showed that regional law enforcement had problems with its systems. The Police Explorers program was shut down for good, but the harm from years of wrongdoing continued to affect many lives. The case led to widespread calls for change, which forced authorities to rethink how they monitored mentorship programs with minors. The investigation into Sandra's death came to an end when Matthew Farwell was caught and charged in August 2024. Prosecutors presented a lot of evidence connecting him to what happened that night. This included recovered text messages showing years of coercion and manipulation, security footage showing that he was at Sandra's apartment just before she was last seen alive, and forensic analysis showing that her injuries did not look like they were caused by self-harm. Matthew was charged with a lot of different crimes. Besides Sandra's death, he was also charged with several counts of having an inappropriate relationship with her while she was underage. Case records showed that he had used his job as a police explorer to control and train her from a young age. These revelations broke down his claims of innocence, which he kept up even after he was arrested, even though there was a lot of proof against him. Holding other suspects responsible was also very hard. Police had found evidence that Matthew's brother William Farwell and their boss Robert Devine had been involved in wrongdoing in the program, but they were never officially charged. As of early 2025, many people thought that the lack of new prosecutions was due to law enforcement organizations' reluctance to reveal deeper institutional failures. As Matthew Farwell's trial went on, prosecutors said that Sandra had been violently restrained and that her death had been staged to look like a suicide. Forensic experts said that key physical signs, like specific hemorrhages in the eyes and facial swelling, were missing, which supported the theory that she had been suffocated before her body was put in the closet. If Matthew was found guilty, he could face the harshest punishment possible, which could include a life sentence. Capital letter. Sandra Birchmore's case wasn't just about one woman's tragedy. It became a sign of how badly the system works. She showed that there were problems with how the police were watching over Dee. Her family, along with activists and advocates, kept fighting for justice so that her story would not be lost and her case would lead to real change. That's it for today's case. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think justice was served, or is there more to the story? If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.